Hello.
I'm not sure if it's recording or not. Oh, it says recording in the corner. Okay, cool.
Hiya, BookTube.
Good evening, readers. It's Tilly here from Tilly's Shelf, and I am sharing today with
Roz from Scallydantling About the Books.
Yes, and together we're doing another one of our discussing drama videos. So I have persuaded Roz to join me in a scallydandle to Lebanon, which is a country that she has previously scallydandled to whilst reading. But you read something that you didn't necessarily recommend, I think.
Well, it was good, but it was about a kind of a sad book about an elderly man,
Right.
and whereas this is a very vibrant play.
Filled with life and occasional violent murder.
And sex.
Yes. Yeah, so we should say when we start out that this video is, well, this play very much is not safe for work. This is not a child appropriate content. Obviously we'll be talking about it in our normal sensible manner. But yes, it's not a child friendly play, I suppose. Yes. Although it has kind of like a fairy tale reputation in Europe, I think, because of various weirdly published ones, or I guess very edited versions that were translated. I should probably say what play it is that we're going to be talking about, shouldn't I?
I think you should.
She said to me, she said, oh, you introduce it, forgetting that I'm completely incompetent about this kind of thing. So we are talking about The 1001 Nights, and this is a play version that was adapted by Hanan Al-Shaikh and dramatised by Tim Supple. So The 1001 Nights are obviously a very old collection of stories that are principally Syrian in origin, and the characters from them are kind of from the 7th and 8th centuries, in the kind of the golden age of the Abbasid Empire, which was an Islamic empire at that time. But obviously the stories have gone through many variations through the years, and Hanan Al-Shaikh and Tim Supple obviously decided that it was time to put them together as a play and perform them at the Edinburgh Festival, which happened in 2011, so really around the time of the Arab Spring. So there was kind of like I think a lot of interest in the work at that time because of maybe a greater awareness of Arabic and Middle Eastern culture that was coming into our news streams at the time. So yeah, so I should say why we're gonna read this play, why we have read this play this month.
Yes, do. And then maybe a little bit more about how people, well, no, before you do that, I was just going to say, when you say 1001 Nights, and everybody thinks they know what you're talking about, and it's like, Disney, Aladdin and Sinbad the Sailor and all of that, and you're wrong. You're wrong, people. That is not what it's like, okay?
Yeah. So Aladdin and Alibaba and the magic carpets and so on were inserted into the stories in a French translation in the 16th century, which was the first time that the tales had really been kind of brought to a Western audience, I suppose. What this is the character that you might have heard of Shaharazad, or Shaharazad as she's named in this version, is a woman who is fighting for her life by telling stories to a misogynistic, murderous king every night to persuade him not to kill her, which I think as a framing device is one that we're kind of relatively familiar with. But the stories, when you go into them, they're really, well, like we've said, they're full of kind of sex and lust and desire and jealousy and murder and a decent amount of magic as well.
Yeah. So explain why we were doing a play by a Lebanese author.
So we've been doing a play every month this year, haven't we? And this month I am doing my own private kind of scallydandling project where I'm trying to read things from and watch things from the country of Lebanon, just to kind of mentally travel there and kind of get to know a little bit of aspects of the culture and language and so on. So because we do a play every month, we just thought that it would be fitting to choose a play from Lebanon to do that with, I suppose. So Hanan Al-Shaikh is a very well-known and well-respected Lebanese author. So she was born in Lebanon and grew up in Beirut. She was from a Shia Muslim family where her parents and her community were relatively strict. She then went on to be educated in Cairo, then moved to Saudi Arabia. So she's really moved around the area quite a lot, and now she lives in London. And one of the interesting things I found in the introduction of this play is that she talks about how, as an author, when she had no connection to the 1001 Nights, before she'd even thought of doing any kind of adaptation, she really rejected that people reviewing her works in Europe tended to just label her as like a modern Shaharazad. But yet the themes of this play, in terms of like a really strongly anti-patriarchal message and women really fighting back against oppressive systems, are really like, those are the themes that she likes to write about. So it was interesting that she kind of came back to the tales and saw something that she could relate to in them, I suppose.
But it's a real kind of like Western Orientalism thing, isn't it? To say, oh, you're like an Arab.
Yeah, a female Arab woman, you must be Shaharazad, you know.
You must, well, oh, you know, it's really lazy.
It's lazy reviewing, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So I can see why she was really, really irritated.
Oh, yeah.
She told an interesting story about wanting to read The 1001 Nights as a child, and someone told her that the local barber had a copy, so she went down to kind of have a look, and she saw it in his barber shop. And it was all kind of like greasy and yellowed, and like lots of men had been going through the pages, and she didn't understand why. She thought, well, like, oh, I can't touch that or go anywhere near that. And then she, a friend said they had a copy at home, and so she went, and it was in the friend's father's library, but it was locked in a cabinet. And he said that, oh, well, he didn't want anyone to read all of it because they might read it and then die, you know, and shit. But obviously it was actually that he didn't want his wives or daughters reading this quite sexually.
Because it's quite controversial. I mean, even for today, you don't often read something that's quite as explicit as this, which makes it a very interesting choice of subject matter for a play. And I think we both found ourselves asking ourselves how they dealt with all these quite graphic scenes. But since we spoke earlier on, I have done a little bit of research, and apparently this play, as it was performed, was 6 hours long.
Wow.
So obviously split into 2 parts, but 6 hours of theatre for 19 actors. So it was really like quite a crowded production, because I was thinking when reading it that you would double a lot of the parts, but it seems like maybe they didn't do that so much. But yeah, 6 hours, I guess, makes sense in the context that it's 1001 Nights, so it's supposed to be several years. So it does need to be quite long. And they used prop phalluses apparently to try and convey some of these dramatic these sexual scenes. And yeah, apparently it was quite positively reviewed at the time when it was put on in Edinburgh, and it's also been performed in Toronto. So yeah, I thought you would find that interesting. 6 hours.
No, yeah, a prop phallus, I can see. Well, my suggestion, but there's one story where someone, like a jinn is someone gets 3 wishes. This is so funny. This
funny, silly story. It's a kind of like a joke tale. Yeah.
And so his wife asks, you know, if she can like have the first wish, and she wishes for him to have like an enormous penis. So he's given this enormous penis, and you know, I was picturing, could you do it like with a balloon or something?
Yeah, and then you just like inflate the balloon, and then because the second wish, she wishes that she says it's too big, and she wishes for it to be completely gone, so you could just like pop the balloon.
Yeah, and then he has nothing.
Yeah,
he's then like, you know, emasculated. So then he has to use his third wish
to get put back to normal.
To get back to normal, and so he's blown the chances for, like, you know, infinite riches, or, you know, and all the things. It's a classic 3 wishes problem, isn't it?
Yeah. No, it's dreadful. It's always like never works out. What that story reminded me of, in a slightly less explicit way, is I mentioned I was reading a new book of Middle Eastern food by Claudia Roden, and she is an Egyptian author who now lives in Europe. and she, in the midst of her recipe book, includes a lot of short folk tales, and she focuses on this character called the Koja or the Goha, and this is a character that is common across many different countries with slightly different names in each. And the unifying theme of these stories is that just ridiculous things keep happening to this character, the Koja, and it's just very much like those Three Wishes things, where he is like trying to save a load of money, but then the money all ends up getting taken away, and just this kind of like everyman who gets set up into these ridiculous situations and then always winds up with like a kind of witty resolution, I suppose. So you kind of like see the essence of that.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. The when we were wondering a bit about how on earth you would stage it, and you've maybe found out a bit more, but yes, I mean I think I pictured perhaps doing it in the round with Shaharazad and Shahraya,
yeah.
Shahra, is the king who the king,
yeah.
Because he caught his wife having being unfaithful to him with her slaves, having a bit of an orgy actually. So he kills her, and then every day he has his vizier bring him a new wife who's a virgin, and he has sex with her, and then she's executed in the morning. And Shaharazad steps up to say, marry me to the king, she's the vizier's daughter, and I'm going to try and put a stop to this, which she does through kind of with the stories.
It's interesting because the framing story is almost like the most problematic story, because there are stories within the stories, right, where women experience like horrific abuses, and there is one particular point where they get to the end of this whole set of stories, because it's just stories within stories, it's loads of layers, and there's a man there who's like, all right, so we've got people here that have caused some of the problems, we've got people here who've experienced some of the problems, and you're all going to get married again and you'll all live happily ever after. And the women involved say, actually no thank you, I don't want to get married, I don't want to have this experience because it's gone badly. But weirdly, in the framing story, at the end, Shaharazad, we know that she has had a baby with the king, and he's like, oh, I promise I'm not going to kill you, we're going to live happily ever after. And she is just completely fine with that. And it's kind of a bit kind of Stockholm syndrome-y, and you kind of think that maybe the other women within the story have a kind of a better resolution when they say, actually, I'm happy living unmarried, thank you very much.
Yes, that is really true. That that really struck me as well. I felt a bit kind of uncomfortable. Like we'd have these kind of quite powerful, women taking back control or whatever in places, and then you wind up with. Although, it's like she's a heroic figure, isn't she? Because she she sort of does it for womankind, doesn't she?
Yeah.
But it's still a little, but I guess they've had 3 years together of telling stories every night, and
and maybe she is confident that he has changed, and
well, it's like Jane Eyre, isn't it? At the end of Jane Eyre, when she decides that she will marry Mr. Rochester, and you read that when you're sort of perhaps, I don't know, if you're romantic, you think, oh, how lovely, and he's changed, and then like alternatively, as a sort of, with a feminist perspective, you think, what do you think you're marrying this man who, like, locked up his wife before and then tried to involve you in bigamy, and
But at least Rochester never was actively planning to kill her.
Yes. True, but almost spiritually he was, by trying to get her to commit bigamy. But I know what you mean. No, but
I don't know.
What I mean is that thing, isn't it, of like the idea that someone can change. Well, we want to think that people can change, but when actually someone has murdered a succession of wives, they might change.
But maybe she's fully rehabilitated him and made him into a better man. I don't know.
Through the power of storytelling.
It's a brilliant.
Like.
It's a brilliant story for saying that stories have the power to change lives and save lives and so on, in interesting ways.
Yeah, but I kind of went off on a tangent when I was talking about how on earth you'd stage it. And as I say, my picture was you do it in the round, and you'd have the bed, like a kind of rather sort of luscious sort of, you know, divan bed with the pair of them on it, with her telling the story, and then
her younger sister's there the whole time, hiding under the bed, I think.
Yes. Listening to them having sex and then saying, "Oh, tell us a story, Shaharazad." Anyway,
it is a bit weird in places.
Yes, but that then, yes, that you could have like actors, the stories could happen around them, and I imagined, yes, you'd have a very small cast and that people would double up a lot. So I'm really interested that actually with 19 people.
Yeah.
The other way that I think it could work as like a promenade performance, where you keep moving to different rooms and then you come back to, you know, maybe where the first scene.
So I guess like you have rooms for the layers of stories.
Yes, because it's like a Russian doll of stories, isn't it? You've got the outer one is the Shaharazad story, and then you go in and in and in and in, and then out and out and out and out.
Yeah. I'm gonna offer my opinion, which obviously I haven't seen this performed, but I have sincere doubts that it would work very well as a performance, although it was well reviewed. But I feel like this is a set of stories that are made to be told, and they are made to be performative in the way that they are told. They're very much spoken tales, but I don't think that the way they are set up and the way they are told really adapts itself well to like a stage context, like to having multiple actors and so on. You could have maybe multiple voices, but yeah, I
thought maybe just her voice really and his, and have the other actors mime.
Yeah, potentially. Yeah.
No, I mean, it lends itself. You'd have to do some very creative staging as the answer. So it'll be a wonderful challenge to a director and a cast, and you know, I think with a certain amount of improvisation and so on.
Yeah. So I think it's not so much about the staging as about the way that the stories are narrated, because even when they've tried to make the scenes dramatic, they're still very much it still very much reads like somebody telling a story rather than a story being acted out, which is of course the point. Like it is somebody telling a story, but I think in a way it might not be enjoyable, and it might be a little bit much to take in and a little bit less intuitive to understand than a normal play, I suppose.
Yes, and 6 hours worth, my goodness. Yeah. Although, you know,
commitment.
I think, I mean, I enjoyed reading it. I did feel a little befuddled at times because of the onion effect. You know, I'd sometimes get a bit confused about which layer I was in.
Then they'd say something like, they'd refer to somebody, this character who's been beaten by, and then I was thinking, why has she been beaten? Like when did this beating occur? And then you think it's like actually 3 stories ago when we were last in this layer of the story.
Yes. Having said that, I think it's a worthwhile attempt to take like a different literary and storytelling tradition and turn it into drama. You know, I thought that was like a worthy, I don't mean worthy as you know what I mean, but like a worthwhile thing to try and do.
What I feel like I need to do is I need to read other plays from Arab language, Arab culture, but like not necessarily just Lebanon, but from a variety of countries, because I wouldn't say that this, although Hanan Al-Shaikh is Lebanese, I wouldn't say that this play is exactly specifically Lebanese, and just compare, like, I guess how this play compares to plays that are written in that context and not written to be performed in the Edinburgh International Festival, I suppose.
And the other thing that I think I'm will have to admit to being ignorant about, and feel like I should now go and find out, is how long a tradition of drama and plays there is in, you know, the sort of that area, because
I don't know. I really don't know.
Because I'm not actually sure. I mean, I can't, because people love storytelling is big, but and the idea of someone, you know, public storytelling and you know, and dance. There's all sorts of things, but I'm not sure. But I feel I should look, because, you know, for all I know, you know, the Ottoman court had, you know, the equivalent to Shakespeare, and if so, why don't I know?
I know that there were definitely, like, puppet shows were quite a big thing. I know that because I've heard of them being compared to like Egyptian Punch and Judy kind of thing. Obviously that's a like very much a way of making it sound familiar, but so I know puppet shows are very much a thing. Obviously dance performance is very much a thing, and storytelling has always been a big thing, but I'm not sure about specific, like, poetry definitely.
Very much poetry, and poetry, publicly performed poetry.
Publicly performed poetry with multiple poets interacting, which I guess you could argue is a form of play in itself. I don't know how much about, like, specific theatre, I suppose.
So that's a little something for us both to go and find out.
Something to learn about.
I
realized I just mentioned, like, that this is not a specifically Lebanese play, but I think it's quite interesting to talk about where it is set, because it's kind of this magical world that moves around a lot, but it's the, like, geographically the stories, like I said, they've got this origin. The oldest version found has been from Syria, but they travel from Cairo to Baghdad, and they even go as far as China, and you get a sense of a population that is effectively quite mobile and quite
like a Muslim Arabic speaking culture that covers a huge area. And the characters are kind of like, some of them are princes, some of them we've talked about are women who didn't necessarily have specific professions, but who also travelled widely, but also merchant characters come up again and again, and they obviously had a lot of capacity for travelling around this empire, so they kind of bring different things from different places. And economically active women, you know, women merchants, and, you know, like,
women who take over their father's business, or women who perform tricks and so on to gain their incomes.
And it's I may be wrong, but I felt like there's almost like two traditions in it, like a kind of an older one, and then perhaps a stricter set of sort of Islamic, I don't know, expectations about relationships between men and women. So, you know, or is it just that our idea of sort of Muslim culture has changed over time? Do you know what I mean? So like, so there's lots and lots of men being the whole honor thing is, you know what I mean? Like, women are endlessly getting, like, sliced up or beheaded or whatever because they're thought to have been unfaithful when actually they haven't, or, you know, things along those lines. And people get married without having ever met their spouse before. But equally, other people, you know, meet someone in the street, decide to go and have sex with them, or, you know, relationships with them. So it's almost like there's two versions of male-female relationships.
And I guess part of that would come from the tales coming from over such a long period of time and over such a wide geographical area, where there are going to be different approaches and different styles of doing things, I suppose. No, definitely really interesting.
So in that sense, it's left me with lots of things to go and read up about and think about and find out about.
So I wanted to ask you, who was your favourite character?
I think one of the sisters.
So there's a set of 5 sisters in one of the framing stories.
The mistress of the house, that sister. She's
the one who gets married to a peacock.
Yes.
Who's secretly a djinn.
Djinn.
I think my favourite character is Delilah, who is this
Delilah the Wily.
Delilah the Wily, who's this brilliant old woman who, her husband dies and she loses her pension from the ruler. The ruler was giving her husband money and refuses to give it to her, but starts to pay somebody else. And she kind of says, well, I don't agree with this. I think this is not fair. So she performs this, like, insane chain reaction of tricks on people who she just like bumps into people in the street and then like steals their donkey, and just like thing after thing after thing, and eventually her troublemaking brings her to the attention of the ruler, who she also plays a trick on, and she kind of uses the resolution of this as, well, you know, obviously I can run rings around you, so you should just give me my pension, please.
Give me the pension and I'll give everything back that I stole, but you know, hey,
Yeah.
look at me, I'm clever.
Yeah. Appreciate my skills. Yeah.
She
I
was
thought
great.
She was brilliant. Very resourceful.
Yeah. Now I think I'm wondering about how long this is, and we can't.
I can't actually see. I wish
nor
I
can
could.
I, but I have a feeling that probably we should like
wrap up.
I'm really glad you got me to read this. It was a very different experience from all our other discussing drama sort of things that we've read. I think I struggled more with understanding how you successfully stage it than I would with a kind of the Greek tragedy that was our very first of our discussing drama. But it's been one of the most sort of stimulating in terms of things to then go and find out more about. So
yeah, it's definitely been a very much an enjoyable play to read and think about, and definitely not how do I put this correctly, like I wouldn't then go away and say, oh yeah, I've read the 1001 Nights, because it's very much a selection from them and interpretation of them, but it was interesting to have a little insight into that, I guess that world of stories, I suppose.
You'll know Steve Donoghue, the booktuber, who's doing a
I've heard of him.
yes, funnily enough, who's doing a Penguin classic like every day all year, and he did 1001 Nights like just strange enough just like a couple of weeks ago, and the Penguin classic edition is 3 fat volumes. So,
yeah, I remember trying to read some of it at secondary school, because we had a copy in there was like the Everyman Classic Library, and it was about this big, and I didn't get very far because it's quite dense and quite complex, I think.
Yeah, so
depending on the translation approach, obviously.
But you could get it for me for Christmas, and then we can both dip in and out of it.
The thing is, it's not like, it's quite hard to dip in and out of, because there are so many layers. Like, that's the point. You're not supposed to be able to say, oh, I've finished for today.
Because it's the classic use of the cliffhanger to keep the audience waiting, so they don't have you beheaded in the morning. They wait to get the next bit of the story. Yeah. Well, thanks, Tilly. This was great.
No, thank you, Roz. I've really enjoyed talking about this, and it's been lovely speaking to you.
Yeah, bye.
And if you've happened to be in Edinburgh in 2011 and you saw this, or if you've read it at all, or other versions of the 1001 Nights, let us know your thoughts in the comments.
Absolutely, or any of the questions that we're now wondering about. That
if you happen to know about Arabic drama.
Yeah. Okay.
Any of that. Bye. Take care. Bye.